Well, I'd like to welcome everyone here in person, really a warm welcome to all of you, as well as the folks virtually. So we really appreciate you all being here. The presenters from Age Plus, Stephanie Hooper, Olivia Robinson, and Julia Brown are going to introduce themselves, and we're going to get started now. So once again, thank you. And I'm Tracy Williams-Murphy, by the way, for any of you who don't know me.
Thank you, Tracy. Everybody knows Tracy, and we really appreciate the work that she's done to put this together, including even prior to this event, this particular event, and we'll talk about other ways to be engaged as throughout the presentation. But I'm Stephanie Hooper. I'm the CEO and president of Age Plus. I have Julia Brown and Olivia Robinson. Julia and Olivia are outreach and engagement managers and are really close to those on the ground that are working with older adults and their caregivers every day, all across the state. We are a virtual organization because we are statewide, and so with a particular focus and emphasis on making sure the rural story is told and how it is to age in rural communities, not just urban communities. So Julia is actually a gerontologist. Olivia is bilingual, and she has a background in education, especially with working with children. So we also bring this a cross-generational approach to aging when we're talking to communities like you. So thank you again for being here and your interest. So just a little bit about Age Plus. We are a statewide nonprofit. We're a bit of a unicorn when it comes to nonprofits. We are a combination of advocacy, but also program demonstration and housing development. But we don't have day-to-day direct service like a Meals on Wheels service provider. So we very much are part of lifting the voice of what older adults and their caregivers and families are facing in the community to affect policy. We're using that insight to work with communities to develop programs that could be scaled and that other communities can adopt for themselves. And we are also innovating. So some of the initiatives that we're putting forth right now are anti-ageism training, just like this, but also other partnerships with entities that help bring an aging lens to their work. So local public health departments, for instance, or libraries, and really focusing on how we can help in communities intentionally include older adults when they're making decisions. So today, this is going to be really fun, just so you know. Today we're going to give you a little bit of background on the demographic shift. You know, why are we talking about this? Why is it relevant? Other than it's the right thing to do, but why is it even more relevant right now? The harms of ageism and how it does shape our lives from the moment we're born. And then giving you some opportunities to reflect, but also take action. This is not meant to be a one and done presentation. This is to start your journey, if you haven't already. And what it means to really build an age-positive Oregon. So that's how we'll take you through the day. So first, take a minute and think about, imagine yourself at 80 years old. So you woke up this morning and you're 80, or it's your 80th birthday. How about that? What would your day look like? And I want you to think about it for like 20 seconds, and then we're actually gonna have you talk to those around you, and online, we're gonna put you in breakout rooms. We're gonna give you actually about 6 or 7 minutes so that everybody gets a chance to share. What do you think that your day will be like when you're 80? Okay? Okay, big surprise. We're gonna ask for some volunteers to share. So who in the room physically would like to share a couple of their thoughts, and then think about who online would like to come off mute and share. So let's start with in the room.
I get the mic for this. So fancy. And Laura's either taking a photo or video. But no, our group, I think we covered a lot of different domains of aging. And all of us had something unique that, that kind of all had us going, oh, that is a really good point. We talked about how important, function is for us. So being able to maintain the hobbies that we care about now, like biking and walking, and how that's a combination of us putting in, work to maintain our health and wellness, but also at the community level, looking at things like urban planning, looking at things like whether there are sidewalks or whether streets are lit, what houses look like, are there a lot of steps that we're going to think about as we age? And then also other things like, just enjoying a nice coffee, fishing, collecting rocks, just things like that as we, socializing, I think was a big one, the inspiration from a group of older adults who just come out and sit down together and drink wine and hang out. So, we really are thinking about, surprisingly, not a whole lot of financial stuff, more about our own health and wellness, and then about our social relationships and our ability to do things that we care about.
How about online? Is there anyone that wants to come off mute and share?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I was sharing with the others that my parents are my biggest role models. They're 85 and 84, and they are so active. They do a lot of volunteering, which I love that they're involved in that. They got all the little concerts in the summertime that they have the music at the parks. They love that. They do a lot of walking. They do travel. I just love their life, and I would love to duplicate that when I get to that age. So I need to make sure that I'm set up for retirement, I guess financially, because I don't want to be restricted in that way, so I can travel. Like another member brought up, she wants to just be able to say yes, and I love that. So that would be my plan.
Great. Thanks so much, Sharon. How about Erica?
I live with my 87-year-old mother, which is so great. We live in a 3-generation household. So in our group, what we talked about is a couple things. One is my own experience of watching my mom, who was very active. She was out dancing every Thursday until about 79, and then she started developing some back problems. But watching that shift, watching her in general in great physical health, but then having really limited mobility and how that's changed. But what we talked about was, as some of us are aging and starting to feel the aches and pains, imagining what life looks like at 80, especially if we have parents who are struggling, is trying to think about how we can take care of ourselves, like to prevent that. Like, what does life look like when these things happen to our bodies that aren't necessarily, there's certain things that we can do, but things start happening to our bodies and we become limited, and then quality of life changes. The world is moving very fast for a lot of older people. That changes their ability to be out in the world as well. But we focus a lot on sort of how can we prevent those things from impacting us in the same way, and then when they do, what can we do to help mitigate some of the risks that are involved with that.
Thank you so much, Erica. Unfortunately, we're going to need to move on. Nicole, we'll get you on the next round. Thanks for your patience.
Well, and all of those examples are so pertinent to our discussion today, because aging is living. I mean, from the moment we're born, we start to age. So how we are taking care of ourselves so that we can age well, as much as possible, right? And if we get to age, that's a good thing, right? Aging is living. So here's where we're at. We now have more people 65 and over than 19 and under in Oregon. We didn't anticipate this change really happening until for another 5 years or so. And this is because we are having fewer children, we're living longer, and our lack of as much immigration is also a major factor. So even though if you look at this green line, the green line is the youth and the lower line are the older adults. the youth haven't really been climbing. They've been leveling off. And now the older adults are all catching up. And so this has so many implications on all of those things that we just said were important to us as we age. Our physical health, our mental health, our financial health, our social engagement, and our contributions to the community. In rural areas, this is even more pronounced. So there are many rural areas that already have 25 to 30% of their population 65 plus. And so it's really important to include the rural perspective when we're working on solutions for aging. Typically, there's some of the unique challenges or intensified challenges are transportation, good grocery stores, getting pharmacies. We have pharmacy deserts in some parts of Oregon where people have to travel 30, 40, 50 miles to get to a pharmacy. And it's also important to note that this change is permanent. So another visual is we used to have our age pyramid with very few older adults and a lot of kids at the bottom, and now we're a pillar. So we're going to stay a pillar. There's going to be this even distribution, even a little widening at the top pretty soon. And so as we're looking at our existing resources, as we're looking at our spaces, we really need spaces and environments and communities that fit for that pillar, right? Older adults are going to be, a quarter of our population. And the 85 plus cohort, because I also want to say older adults are not a monolith, right? There's many different cohorts of aging, but the 85 plus are the fastest growing segment of the older adult population. So our systems are really set up for that 70s and 80s when we had a lot of kids at the bottom and very few older adults at the top. And that's the real challenge right now, is thinking ahead, planning now with all the other crises that we're facing to really adjust our systems and our communities for a different population. So county by county, this illustrates how many older adults, how many counties already have more than 20% are below 20% in terms of older adults as part of their population. It's mostly urban areas because there's just more people, and so the distribution is more spread out. But you can see every county is going to struggle with this opportunity and challenge. And as I mentioned, why? I probably skipped ahead. We are living longer, we're having fewer children, but it's this opportunity to embrace a journey of continuous growth, of continuous learning, and think about a new life map of how we zigzag through life and maybe not a straight line anymore. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia to keep us moving.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. So, what's holding us back to preparing for all of this and thinking about these things? Well, it's ageism. And what the heck is ageism? And why is that a new word? A lot of people think that that's, some kind of newfangled creation, but actually that term was coined by a geriatrician, Dr. Robert Butler, in 1968. Notice that's when this country was having a whole bunch of civil rights movements, right? And it's the systemic discrimination against older people. So, we've become used to, unfortunately, thinking about the racism in our culture, sexism, other forms of discrimination, but less so about ageism. And it's universal, right? There's no us and them. It's all us, as you heard earlier. We're all aging. But for people that are otherwise marginalized by gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, becoming older can add double or triple jeopardy to their well-being and health outcomes. So we all experience ageism at some point in our lives, actually from childhood to old age. We are focused on older adults. That's our mission, and for the reasons we will be talking about. But you know, even when we say, oh, kids these days, or assume that younger coworkers are unintelligent or something, that is the other side of this coin. But when it comes to getting older, we assume a breaking down, right? Both mental and physical. We become less than as we age. That's what we think. Less attractive, less able, less intelligent. And so we fear this. We don't want to think about getting older or dying because we don't have the tools to think about it in a positive way. But we've got some tools for you. So much of society, as well as government and social programming, looks at older adults through a negative lens of decline, of frailty, of dependency, and disability. So on the right is a bar graph from a National Institute of Health study with over 2,000 cross-sector participants, and I want to stress aged 50 to 80. So, you know, think back, look at how everyday ageism was almost 100% people experienced it and 80% internalized. Have you or someone you know experienced ageism? Maybe ask a friend or a relative. An example might be passed up for a job because you've got too much experience, or being spoken to like a child, being told by a doctor that a health problem is just due to your age. The World Health Organization found that in 96% of studies conducted, ageism was associated with worse health outcomes in all of the health domains examined. So strap in, I should have said that at the start. There's a lot going on here. For those of you who were here last year, this is a review, but I think it's worth reviewing. Ageism is cyclical and self-supporting in all of these areas, from systemic to organizational to interpersonal to internalized personal. And each area upholds and interacts with the other areas. So systemic is the air around us. Invisible, unnoticed, we're always breathing it in. It includes messages, distribution of resources, and rules we learn by simply participating in culture. So stereotypes that permeate society, like old people are bad drivers, or people can't learn new skills when they get to a certain age. Systemic ageism trickles down to influence every person's thoughts and beliefs and to affect our interactions with other people and to shape the institutions that serve us. So institutional ageism occurs within institutions, organizations, and systems of power. Unfair policies, discriminatory practices, such that may happen in healthcare, housing, transportation, and government that routinely produce inequities. For workforce, it could look like job applications not being considered due to a long ago graduation date. Closer to home, interpersonal ageism, which occurs between us, between individuals. So these are your interactions with family, with coworkers, with clients, even with strangers. Think about the over-the-hill birthday card you may have sent or received. It might seem harmless, but this kind of compliment could also be a jab at someone's self-image. Lastly, internalized ageism lies within all of us. It's our private beliefs, our stereotypes, assumptions, and biases about aging and older people, including ourselves. So these may be conscious or unconscious, things we've absorbed from society. So this might look like looking at the mirror, at yourself, at your wrinkles, at your sagging skin, and thinking, I look old, meaning less attractive. Or if you forget something and you say, oh, I must be having a senior moment, right? We all forget things throughout our lives. So ageism has its most severe impacts when it intersects with other systems of bias or discrimination. I really want to stress that, such as those around class, race, gender, ability, sexual orientation, or living in a rural area. And again, this is the double or triple jeopardy. So here's what that looks like in sort of a mapping. Those who have experienced a lifetime which includes systemic racism, ableism, gender inequality, LGBTQ plus adversity, poverty, geographic disparities, and now suddenly you're old. The likely conclusion, experience of all of that is the compounding of all of these adverse conditions, resulting in poorer health and well-being than those with lives without these systemic inequities. So, and then I just want to make a pitch. For those here, we've got some of our briefing papers on aging while Black, women's longevity gap, older workers, older LGBTQ plus Oregonians, and there are many, many research papers, articles, organizations, and leaders to follow to do deeper dives into each of these intersecting biases. For those in person, we have our papers here, and for those online, they are on our website. So a little bit more on this. When we look at ageism alone, we risk missing how other experiences compound it. A low-income older adult may skip medical visits because of cost. An older woman who took time out of the workplace for caregiving may struggle to afford rent. An older queer person may fear discrimination in assisted living. An older Native American, Latinx, or Black Oregonian may face long-standing barriers to quality health care and economic opportunity that affect health and longevity later in life. These examples illuminate how barriers layer over time. Recognizing those layers doesn't divide us, but points us to where solutions are most needed. For many straight white men who haven't experienced poverty or incarceration or disability, becoming old, I'm putting that in quotes, may be the first time they encounter discrimination. For others, aging simply adds another layer of bias to, to experiences they've faced throughout life. But aging is not a one-size-fits-all experience. So again, think about when we talk about older adults, again, I'm using quotes, we're talking about people spanning 30 or 40 years. We don't have a name for the period of life in between middle age and what we call senior. Younger older adults, chapter 3, you know, we've got children, we've got adolescent, we've got teen, we've got, you know, so think about that. That's one of those systemic issues. And yet older adults are often underrepresented in clinical research, even though they tend to be major consumers of new therapies. They're also less likely to receive preventative care. Ageism in healthcare, like racism in healthcare, has been linked to decreased longevity, inadequate or inappropriate care, more emergency room visits, and more hospitalizations and more. So there are both physical and economic impacts. Most medical schools don't require students to complete a rotation in geriatrics. They are required to rotate through many other specialties like pediatrics and surgery. But unless you seek out a geriatrics elective, if it's even offered, students don't receive adequate exposure to geriatric medicine. So geriatrics is a specialty field because it places special emphasis on an interdisciplinary team. Why? Because older patients are more complex. And there's also the needs of family caregivers. So multimorbidities, polypharmacy, function, cognition, these are all included in caring for the health of older adults. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, the number of board-certified geriatricians in the US has even fallen over the past 20 years. And recent studies indicate that negative perceptions of older adults, hello, ageism, among medical students is the reason why. In addition, geriatricians typically earn less than other MDs. So, what is aging? What's the difference between aging and, you know, all the things we think of with bias? So, ageism may be encountered by all of us in very similar ways, but aging, as the previous slide said, is not one size fits all. You hear about one 80-year-old, like we heard earlier. You hear about one 80-year-old. So what is aging exactly? Most people think about it in chronological age. For example, the number of people in a population 65 and older, like Stephanie talked about earlier. But aging is more than that. We can also think about it biologically, how it affects our organs, our cells. This occurs differently within each of us. We'll talk about, the same goes for psychological age. We'll talk more about that later on, how a person thinks and feels. And this matters quite a bit, actually. And aging is a process. What it means to be old has varied over time across cultures and within individuals. The stuff of aging is continuous and cumulative. People don't become old at any specific age, right? Age is a social construction of a biological process. It's complicated. Has anyone heard the term normal aging? Probably we have. So there is such a thing, and it's used to describe things to expect as we get older. Risk goes up for falls as we get older. We might have short-term memory issues. Remember, we're amassing a lifetime, a library of information. It might be harder to pull things out of that library. But many of the things that we and medical professionals chalk up to normal aging are really false beliefs that can lead to less favorable prognoses and worse health outcomes. So if you have a particular ache, it's not because you're old. So 2 takeaways here, backed up by decades of research. Changes that occur with aging do not inevitably lead to diseases like diabetes, hypertension, or dementia, and no single chronological timetable of human aging exists. We all age differently. So we're gonna do this again. We're gonna do some breakout rooms. And with all of what I've just spoken about in mind, let's take a few minutes to reflect and discuss again. And We'll do another 6 or 7 minutes. How do you measure your life? Think about that as opposed to just your chronological age. Are we back?
We're back.
Okay. So I do want to hear from some people. I just want to start by saying I was just talking about compounding inequity. So think about if you are a Black American who perhaps has a lifetime of inequalities leading up to old age, and maybe are you going to want to look at your accumulated wealth? Is it there? Have you not been able to travel that much? You know, so when we're thinking about how we're measuring our life, you know, sort of thinking about everyone and the differences there. And with that, is there anyone in the room that would like to share what came up for them with this? Someone maybe who didn't share last time. And if not, we will go to online.
We said like the actual number of years might not matter as much as like the life experiences and the places we've been. And also too, like maybe different generations have different ideas about accumulated wealth. Like that's not expected for every generation. And what else did we talk about?
I think all jobs.
Oh yeah, jobs, like measuring life in terms of what types of jobs you were working and what types of people you were with. And it was interesting to track it back to the not everybody ages the same, and thinking like, yeah, somebody who's 60 doesn't mean one thing, and somebody who's 80 doesn't mean one thing based on their lifestyle, what they've been able to have, and type of like services and healthcare services like throughout their life that they've been able to have. They might look very different than, you know, somebody at the same age. So that was kind of fascinating to think about too. The aging piece is, it's not going to be just like, I'm this number of years. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really give the full story of who you are by just saying the years.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, again, if you imagine yourself at 80, what's the life story that you would tell to someone younger, perhaps in your family or in your life? You know, what's your legacy? Anybody online?
Thank you, this group over here. Yeah, Mauricio is first. And you can just unmute.
As I enter my 40s, I was talking about like how the new middle-age crisis is not to buy a sports car anymore. It's to go camping, get into your truck and just go camp by yourself. And so that's changing. And so it kind of I saw that in the Instagram post, and it kind of made me reflect, hey, I'm starting to like fishing, camping, and cooking, and liking super dad stuff a lot. So am I going through a mini middle-aged crisis? Like, I thought to myself, and I was like, okay, as a Pacific Northwester, you know, my vision of middle-aged crisis has differentiated compared to my Latino mom who was born in southern Mexico. You know, like, she feels she's 65 and she's super old. Like, she feels like a super grandma. So, like, yeah, I think we all have our different perspectives of what getting old means.
Thank you, Mauricio. That's really enlightening and fun. Heather, how about your comment?
Yeah, Olivia and I talked a lot about kind of those similar to life experiences, but things like joy, because you can have joy in good times, you can have joy in hard times. Who's in your village, right? What village did you build across your lifespan? Who did you give a village to? Who gave you a village when you needed it? The things that help us, you know, the stories we tell around that campfire about the good times or the hard times and all of those things. Like, what are the things that we just come to appreciate that happens as sort of like the quality of that life over time, rather than the stuff or the places or the numbers.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Are we ready to move on?
We can move on.
Okay.
But I really appreciate everybody diving into this. Thank you so much here and online. I feel like we heard about this. You know, I was going to ask, how much did you all talk about the positive things in life and aging? And it sounds like you did. And, you know, how we think about aging can actually add years to your life if you think about it positively. So again, this is a repeat if you joined us last year, but worth going into. Research by Dr. Becca Levy at Yale shows that what we believe about aging isn't just a mindset or a feel-good thing. It has measurable effects on physical health and longevity. So people with positive age beliefs about aging live, on average, 7.5 years longer than those with negative age beliefs. So these results have been replicated in over 10 countries, showing this is a global phenomenon. For perspective, if we avoid smoking, we get about 3 years extra on average, and low cholesterol or blood pressure adds about 4 years. So positive age beliefs can have a larger effect than even these common health interventions that most of us know about. And then beyond longevity, positive beliefs help people recover faster from illness, manage stress better, and maintain better mental health and social engagement. So this shows that cultivating an age-positive perspective is not, again, not just feel good, in quotes. It has real, measurable benefits for older adults and for communities that support us as we age. This again is one of our favorite points, and we just heard something about it, about the midlife crisis and how that may have changed for some of us. On the left is what most of us think aging looks like. We begin with discovery, we advance upwards towards mastery of everything, and then the downhill decline towards death. This is our dominant cultural narrative, and it's not true for most of us. For most people, life is a U-shape. We advance towards middle age, and then life becomes more complicated and stressful, culminating in a midlife slump. I think it's a slump more than a crisis because it can last for a while. Speaking personally and about my friends as well, you know, unmet expectations, overwhelming life responsibilities, fear and anxiety about the future kicking in, sometimes caring for older relatives. So as life advances further, though, our lived experiences help us to reduce the intensity of negative emotions and focus more on feelings that promote calm and well-being. We get better at emotional regulation. We find that we're growing as we're aging. We gain more self-acceptance and hopefully acceptance of others as well. We care less. You know, like I don't care as much about what people think about me, thank God. So researchers have traced this happiness curve in hundreds of studies across 44 countries. It's the real deal. So gonna segue now into action for us. We've seen how attitudes about aging affect health, care, and connection. Now it's time to focus on what we can do with this understanding. This is about bringing a new framework for aging and inclusion into our work, our teams, and our communities, and heck, our families and friends. It means seeing values at every age and creating spaces where everyone feels respected and capable of contributing. We're going to look at simple ways to do that through our words, our choices, care practices that lift people up and strengthen our organizations. So first of all, summoning your courage. Remember that you're speaking to or about your older self when you're talking with older adults, and try to catch yourself when making a generalization or an assumption. Pay attention to the actual person in front of you. Lean into curiosity rather than diving right into correcting people, because now that we're thinking about this, about ageism, trust me, you're gonna see it everywhere. So, you know, chances are we're not gonna call it out in every work meeting that we're in. But pay attention and try to speak more specifically about people. So when we're talking, instead of saying older adults, maybe we want to say people over 80, which still doesn't mean everybody over 80, but it's a little better generalization than seniors, you know. And, you know, be brave. Admit your own learning here and unlearning that we're trying to do. I'm a gerontologist, I still catch myself. And I have to try to, you know, we got a lot of rewiring to do. So some sample phrases to carry with you. I was just in this workshop about ageism or ouch, when someone says something that hits wrong. Or can we press pause for a second? I wonder how that landed with other folks. For me, you know, because we often hear people making jokes that it's hard when someone's going to say, oh, it's just a joke, you know? So, and then some specific concepts here, and you've probably heard about microaggressions at this point, and maybe even elder speak. Are you doing these things at work or at home? So to quote someone who I think grew old fabulously, what's age got to do with it? Are we assuming that if you're active, healthy, and attractive at 60, you're an outlier? And thus, we tuck on for your age onto compliments, you know, based on our old stories about aging, you know, oh, you look so great for your age. Ask yourself, would this comment or would this joke be acceptable if it were about someone younger or another identity? You know, and you can say something like, I know you meant that as a compliment, but I've stopped using comments like that because they suggest that something's wrong with looking old. So the other issue is elder speak. Are we speaking to or about older adults as if they are children? Are we treating them as invisible? Again, include yourself in this. We can catch ourselves. As I said, old habits are really hard to break, and practice new ways of relating. So the strategies we use to address ageism in healthcare, speaking up, noticing subtle biases, and promoting respect are just as important in the workplace. Let's see how they translate to professional settings. There is a lot on this slide because there's a heck of a lot we can do around age bias in the workplace. Intergenerational teams bring more skills, right? Mentorship can go both ways. You've got experience and you've got fresh eyes. Hiring and plans to retain, retrain, and recruit younger, older adults, using the quotes. Because remember, some of us are going to be, you know, if you're hiring a 55-year-old or a 60-year-old, That person may be with you for 15 years. Is there any guarantee that a younger person is going to be with you that long? Probably not. Using some of what we learned during the pandemic, working from home options, more flex time, maybe altering work environments to promote well-being for folks. You know, maybe it's brighter lighting, different chairs. You know, maybe it's a chair for a greeter at the store or a chair for the checker at the market. And then, you know, just thinking about continuing to develop people at every age and stage. So our brains are plastic. You've heard about neuroplasticity probably. And we can continue learning up until the very end. Yes, there may be things that are falling away, but we can also keep learning. It may take a little longer, but it's possible. And diversity and inclusivity and belonging is about all of us, and age plays into that. So if we're lucky, we're going to get older. And getting older can mean more time with our loved ones, more time traveling, more time on hobbies, and less caring about the opinions of other people, and less stressing out. So as long as we view aging as frailty, we're going to envision change in that context. If we can challenge that view and see ourselves as resilient and creative, then our orientation towards change can take a new form. Elderhood is often a stage of renewal, reinvention, re-engagement, and not retirement. Aging is opening into who we were meant to be, perhaps, once we drop all the things we were supposed to be doing. Older adults are also not just recipients. We're givers and we're carers, and unfortunately, usually without pay. We're a ready-made workforce. We really are. Looking through the lens of empowerment leads us to invest resources in older adults and bring to the field of aging our highest quality efforts and designs. Think about an older adult that you know personally or in media who you look up to. What is it about them that you admire? Aging can be a virtuous cycle rather than a vicious one, with positive beliefs leading to positive actions, leading back to positive good feelings and beliefs, and so on. If we remove our assumptions, we can broaden our thinking towards results that are, I'm going to credit my colleague Olivia with this, not only adequate, but awesome. I think we lost a slide. Yeah, we lost one. Oh, shucks. Oh, no, we're good. We're good. I'm confused by my notes. Y'all, it's tough up here.
At any age.
I'm one of those struggling midlifers. And I'm going to pass to another one, Stephanie.
So that was a lot of information, but I hope it gave you a lot now from when you were thinking about when you were 80. But imagining yourself and putting yourself in the shoes of an older adult as you continue to age yourself. So having this different lens where older adults aren't a burden or a problem or a bother, but maybe that they are someone to learn from, to be curious about, and to hear about their life experiences. This image, and how that translates from the workplace, but also to our communities. So every year, Age Plus has an annual event, and Care Oregon has been a generous sponsor. And they're called, our fundraising event of the year is called the Ageless Awards. And we give those to older adults all throughout the state who continue to live with purpose, contribute to their communities, and really defy those ageist stereotypes. And it's a great opportunity to also, from an advocacy point, talk about the world, the Oregon that we all want to live in. And at this year's event, we asked the audience, and we had a graphic artist there in real time making this graphic. So this was built on the audience's interpretation of how they see, what aspects they would like to see in building an age-positive Oregon. And some we expected to see, and some were wonderful surprises. But it gives you a sense of how complex our lives are and how ageism, if not interrupted and dismantled, can prevent us from getting all of these benefits that we all want as we grow older. So from health to workplace, housing, I'll touch on the housing example especially. So Age Plus is also a housing developer. We have just opened our third project for low-income older adults, and we've built the housing with universal design principles. So the hallways are wider, the doorways are wider. You have the ability to turn around a mobility device in the living room, in the bathroom. There's a roll-in shower. There's grab bars. But you can also construct housing without the grab bars, but with reinforcement ready to be adaptable. We have all the mechanisms for the stove in the front, so you don't have to reach back. We have counter heights that are not gigantic, so that you can reach cupboards. But this universal design principle means that anyone could live in that place, no matter their age or stage. You could be 20 and having knee surgery and need to use a walker or a mobility device. So those types of forward thinking and planning for everyone can really help and promote and really build, literally, an age-positive Oregon. So we are here not just as presenters, but we have lots of other ways to be a partner with you and in your organization at Care Oregon or communities you may represent. And so please engage us if you would like to help others continue this journey or continue your own. For executives, leaders, policy advisors, managers, we have this leadership exchange on ageism, which is this PowerPoint, but diving really deep into those four elements: our own internal age bias, our bias in organizations, our bias in systems, and our bias towards each other. It's particularly on intersectionality. And so Tracy has been through that program. If that's something that you're interested in, it's an amazing professional development opportunity. We are also here to help other organizations identify their aging lens gaps and work with them to, audit a website or their customer experience or continue to educate how you want to communicate with your customers even. So we are here as a resource, but we also recognize that you all have much to bring to the conversation too, and we learn just as much when we're in those partnerships. And Julia mentioned these are really simple ways to start taking action, to not let this conversation cease when you leave this room, but to continue to widen and deepen your aging lens. So we will send these slides so the people in the room can actually everybody, so because these have hyperlinks to them. And they're great resources to just continue your own education and to share with others. Maybe you're having a challenging time with a coworker, maybe, or a community member, and you just need some fortify yourself with some facts and practice. But these are all really great resources. We really want to thank you for your attention and participation today, that you're even interested in the topic to begin with and made time to be here. It's really important to, increasing all of our equity lenses when we include age. And really important is we want your feedback. So we'd really appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to scan the QR code, give us your feedback, and take a short survey. It helps with our funders when we can talk about this. We are, as usual, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We're ahead of the curve, and in terms of talking about ageism, there aren't other organizations in Oregon really doing this work. And so being the first is also hard, right, to get it launched. And so having feedback from folks that have experienced some of our work is really important to advance the work. So we appreciate the survey. We take them really seriously. And just really want to thank you for your time and attention today.
Like 10 minutes?
We've got 10 minutes.
So anyone with questions online or in the room, please online raise your hand, and folks in the room, let me know. I'll bring the mic to you.
So I work at House Call Provider. So we provide primary care services, hospice, and palliative care to homebound folks. So we have people 19 to 105. I don't know how old our oldest patient is right now. But one of the things we talk about right when we start our training is really just equity in healthcare in general and how that impacts people and what's considered, geriatric. And so if you've never received dental care or health care in any way, you're going to age more, right? And so for our providers and our teams going in, we have to kind of shift our lens when we're looking at people, and that makes such a huge difference. And so I didn't know if that was something that you consider or think about when you talk about the ageism and just aging in general.
Absolutely. I would say, especially from that intersectionality standpoint, but also in your organization's role, I would think elder speak is a really probably pervasive piece that can happen without it being intentionally harmful. The caregiving workforce attracts caregivers, right? And it's when, even though it may seem endearing to call someone honey or speak really loud or in a high-pitched voice, that in itself is ageism. And so it does, or touch someone
Before asking if
right.
they're comfortable being touched.
Yeah, I'll let Julia keep going, but it's absolutely something that we all need help with, and we're here to continue to educate. We have more and more resources.
And just as you said, just like low-income people, for example, may not have had the lifelong health care that a high-income person may have had, or rural, right? This is sort of a part 2 of our presentation. Last year we did a part 1, and as part of that we do talk about, for example, the houseless population. They're going to age way quicker, in terms of health concerns. Like a 55-year-old person who's been houseless for a decade is going to show up presenting like a 70-year-old person. Yeah. So yes, thank you for that.
And Hudson, maybe you can help me with this. I know our advocacy arm had worked with the Oregon State Legislature, and I know there was a bill being presented that was to assemble a panel on aging, and I know it did not pass. I imagine you were involved in that effort. And can you do any reading the tea leaves? Do we think it might have a chance next year?
We were definitely involved. We have grown some really amazing legislative champions in this work. The bill was HB 3497, and it was to build a task force of all the relevant state agencies along with coalition members of our Shared Future Oregon Coalition, because it's about all of our shared future, right? And to build the state's first multi-sector plan. And multi-sector plans are public-private partnership strategic initiatives that focus on preparing for this, that systems change work. And they're a best practice across the United States. There's over 20 states that already are at some stage in developing them, but they're not meant to sit on a shelf. They have data dashboards and goals and are revisited every couple years. Oregon has no roadmap for how we're going to change these systems. And it's because of ageism. People don't want to think about it. They want to kick it down the road. They also think older adults are taken care of because we have Medicare or Medicaid. And that's simply not the case. So we are fighting ageism in the policy realm. What makes me feel a little bit better is that none or very few of the task force bills got through the legislature because of the severe budget implications that we're facing. So we're building the plan anyways. And we invite any of you to bring your expertise and join that effort. So right now we're coalescing around bold goal areas. And if you're interested in doing any of this policy work, bringing people you know to this policy work, we're developing those work groups to just start the plan. I think the legislative route is probably not going to be fruitful for a long time because of the crisis that we're all under. And so while we have wonderful state agencies that are interested in this work, we'll either be getting an executive order from the governor to say this is important, or we'll be just doing the work and inviting the state agencies to participate, which we have already had really good feedback that they're ready. They just don't have a directive. So we have to continue to maintain this importance, keep it above the noise, show the relevance. Older adults are the fastest growing population to become homeless for the first time. They are the fastest growing population to experience substance use disorder, anxiety, and depression, yet our Medicare behavioral health benefits are very lacking. Our access points for treatment facilities that can take someone with ADLs that need help with ADLs, in addition to more sophisticated med management, those are all lacking. We don't even have group SUD curriculum that considers an aging lens. So all of those things need to happen, and the work isn't just going to magically happen because we have a plan, but we're going to coalesce and provide this momentum to make sure that it's an elevated conversation, and part of when we are making decisions that we make them with an aging lens as well for all ages.
We just have some appreciation online saying thank you for your advocacy. Someone says many consider 50 years old as the geriatric age for people with severe mental illness, like what you guys were talking about. So, and we've got a lot of survey responses already, so thank you.
Thank you. Tracy?
And I have a quick question. I'd like, in the time remaining, if you would talk a little about the leadership exchange on ageism and just what that entails, because that slide was very brief, and going through that that leadership exchange was life-changing for me, which is why these folks are back again.
Yeah. So the Leadership Exchange on Ageism is a cohort learning model. It is all virtual. It's 4 3.5-hour sessions, usually on a Friday morning or a Thursday morning. in like 4 or 5 consecutive weeks, depending on if there's a holiday in there. And we limit the class to about 20, maybe 25. We want to see everyone on Zoom. And we take everyone through kind of a level setting of what ageism is, but then we spend each session together through dialogue and peer learning with really sophisticated facilitation to really examine what ageism is, our own bias, our interpersonal bias, how that intersectionality of racism, sexism, all the isms coalesce with ageism. We talk about how we got here, it's how it's been embedded in us from, very early on in our childhoods, and then continuously reinforced. Then we talk about our organizations, what kind of policies, even well-intentioned policies, are ageist or exclusive or not inclusive. And then systemically, what does this look like for our whole community? And then we practice with each other, breaking it down, those "I'm curious" or "ouch," or, giving people real tools to interrupt, and not in a shaming way, but in a bringing people in way, so that we can continue to interrupt and dismantle. And then we all make commitments during the last session of what we're going to do next, and then we follow up with you. And we now have 3 cohorts, and so now we'll have our alumni activities and our continuing the work and continuing to support each other, because we're all ageist, and it's not one class that's going to help us dismantle that. It's a continuous journey, just like all of our equity and inclusion work that we do for ourselves and our communities.
And to speak to something Stephanie said earlier, we're an organization of 6 people, 2 of whom are part-time. And this is a heavy lift. And we love it. We're super passionate about it. But we need to build a movement. So the LEA is part of building those people to walk with each other and with us to affect change for the benefit of everybody. Thanks.
The Frameworks Institute did research on this, and when people recognize and see ageism, of all the isms, they're more likely to change their behavior. So just recognizing it, once you see it, it's really hard to unsee it. Like Julia said, you're going to be walking around, look in the grocery store who the workers are. Look at your workplaces. Look at the coffee shop, and you'll start to see it everywhere you go. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Want to thank our presenters, Julia, Stephanie, and Olivia in the back here. Really appreciate all of you for being here as well, and all of you online. It's great information. I hope this won't be your last, and I do hope that you'll take part in the leadership exchange on ageism if you're able to, because it was a fantastic 4 weeks, I think it was for us. Yeah. So again, thank you for coming. We hope to see you at a next Cultural Health Series event in the future, and you guys all have a great day. Thank you.